Hi there, and welcome back to this series on using the early notation typesetter. This is the All Ligatures All the Time episode. We will be talking about ligatures and only ligatures. So, ligatures in ENT are handled as sort of a group of units that are stuck together. One of the issues with ligatures in printing is often how they were printed was um, seemingly they would take uh, two pieces of type and seem to like grind down one side and stick them together. Sometimes they would have to make some either a wood cut or some other type of separate cut of the ligature and put it in there, especially if it's not a common ligature like a half colored ligature or such. So there were a lot of issues with examples of typeset ligatures. So we went with more of a hybrid approach. If they had computers in the Renaissance and needed to draw all these ligatures within the kind of mindset of typesetting, how would they do that? So to create a ligature, we have to start by coming over to the ligature section of the notes palette. So you're probably quite familiar with the notes palette by this point, right? You have our standard notes here. We can select them with the number keys. We can click on them. We also have space to switch to rests and tab to switch between the non-colored and colored forms. We also have this ligatures section here, which I can either click, I can hit the tilde key. It's not actually the tilde key, it's the backwards accent, I believe. But the tilde key is much easier to see. So there it is. And if you actually hit tilde, it'll work anyway. So here we have all these ligature building blocks, essentially. We had to try to make sure we could accommodate all this weird fringe cases with ligatures. So there are 6 different primary building blocks in sort of 2 different sets. So there's this first set, which is the single note square, and the second set, which is the 2-note combo, which can be used to form typically slanted ligatures. So for example, if I just, let me actually start by indenting us a little. Maybe I'll give us a lead-in bit of staff there, just so it looks nice. So if I start, I can hit 1 here, and I get this thing that looks like a breve here. If I click to enter that, and I go to enter another note, they're kind of conjoined. And actually, if I stretch the note way down here, it'll draw a connector. And this connector can be as long as you need it. It'll keep connecting these notes. So that's sort of how you would draw a square ligature with no stems, right? You could draw, like this sort of thing. If I wanted to draw another one of those right next to it, I'd hit this. You didn't see anything change, but it just inserted a teeny tiny little spacer, and now I can insert another ligature. So you see, if I exit out and just go to enter another ligature, it'll think I want to add on to this ligature. So if I just hit that, actually the cursor moves over a tiny bit. I can then go and enter another ligature. So now let's talk about stems a little. So we have 2 stemmed versions of each of these, with the stems going down here at the moment, with a stem after and a stem before. Once again, there are a lot of weird fringe cases with some of these ligatures. Down here at the bottom, we have this flip button, which can use the forward slash. Just like flipping stems in a regular notation program, you use the forward slash. So if we want a square ligature going down a half step with the stem on the left going up, I can hit that. And then I switch to 1 and I get that square ligature like that. If I want the stem going down on the left, I switch like so. If I want the slanted alternative to that, I can go like that and then click to place my second note. So slanted ligatures can be accessed 4 through 6. So 4 is just a straight slant with no stem. 6, on the other hand, has a stem on the left, and 5 has the stem on the right. Depending on your ligature, whatever its craziness is, all of that is possible. So these slanted ligatures are entered in 2 parts. So you click to put down the first part, and then you can click again. And you notice as I move it down, the slant actually stretches out. So this was something we noticed that they did with not only typeset notation examples, but also, of course, handwritten notation. They tried to preserve sort of the angle of the slant. And after a while, it gets so long that it just doesn't bother trying to stretch further. Otherwise, your ligature would take up like the entire line. But yeah, so it'll slant more as I go down. And of course, I can, at any point, click to enter that. If I want to enter another slant, I can. There's actually a test pattern we use to sort of regression pattern to make sure that new fonts are working correctly with the ligatures. There we go. And when you hit backspace, you'll get rid of a 2-part component of a ligature. Let's say we have something. I mean, I'm just making stuff up at this point. People who know better look away. So I can put in that and just a few things. Let's say there's a stem here. And I don't know, maybe that has a downward stem at the end. So here's our funky ligature. Let's say we forgot something. I can click and go in here. Oh, I forgot a slanted ligature. There it is. So you can insert new parts of the ligature inside of it. Of course, just like anything else, you can copy and paste ligatures. Just make sure that you insert that separating character. And if it doesn't automatically space them out, definitely put a little spacer in there so people don't think it's one giant ligature. Now you can also do coloration with ligatures. If I press the coloration key, which is tab, or click the button, we get colored forms, and I can go in here and I can make these nice slanted black ligatures like that. You can also do half coloration. Let me show you how that works. I click it as it's white. That's our starting point, and then I hit tab, and now the second half of it is black. So you can do half coloration on slanted ligatures. And of course the same thing in reverse. I can start with it black and switch to white. So all these things are possible. Now, one thing to note is, here I'll just draw a few slants just as an example so you can see this. So here are some slants. I did those wrong. So, okay, there's one other thing. Don't use the stemmed form when you want to connect the notes, right? You know, you don't want this, because there's still a stem there. And that means something different than if there's no stem. So use the stemless form when it doesn't, when it's just connected. It'll automatically fill in those connectors for you. There we go. Let's start with that. Now, if I go over here and change fonts, you'll notice the actual sort of size of these changes. Um, Unfortunately, there's not much of a standard for the width of longas and maxima. They're sort of played by ear, it seems. They're generally about the same size, aside from, of course, the modern Rossen font, which is quite large, but that's just because modern notation is um, physically at a different scale than early notation. So I generally recommend you typeset these ligatures in the font that you want to use, just because otherwise your spacing may not quite match the original that you're working from. So that's sort of a basic primer on ligatures. I hope you have enjoyed this series, and I hope you enjoy the early notation typesetter. As always, if you like the project and are interested in supporting it, be sure to check us out on Patreon. You can connect a Patreon account and back the project and get access to all these other very cool fonts, as well as other features such as disabling the logo at the bottom there. Hope you've enjoyed this series, and have a great day.